Pilate says to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you?" Jesus replied, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." So the theme of this passage is the power. Jesus is not cooperating, you could say, with Pilate, because Pilate is asking weird questions. When I say weird questions, I mean energetically, they're weird. And Pilate does not have the ability to recognize that Jesus is on a mission of redemption for humankind and is seeing him as a criminal or somebody that the Jews have decided is a criminal or is blasphemous or whatever. And he's kind of stepping in last minute to go, what's your deal? That would be our language today. What's your deal? And Jesus is not going to participate in that. So then Pilate tries to play the power card. Do you know I have the power to save your life or take your life? And that doesn't seem to have much effect on Jesus. He doesn't seem to be concerned with Pilate's version of who has power. I want to talk about this concept of power because I really see it as something that is making it difficult for us human beings to live cooperatively on the planet. Pilate is trying to exert power in order to elicit a response that he wants, which in a sense, that's the essence of power, is that I have some sort of a force behind me that will intimidate or threaten you to do what I want you to do. That seems to be a primary addiction on the planet. People want power. Why do they want power? Well, I suppose if you've been in a situation where people are willing to empower you, then the fact that you can emit orders and people respond to them, that has a kind of a feeling, creates an emotional feeling. If you're in the era when you're dating and you can go out into the field, as it were, and people find you attractive, there's a sense of power in that. Oh, I could have her, or I could have him, or I could have them, or whatever. Because the attractiveness that I radiate has power. People want that. People want to be with me, and that's powerful. Another is money. If I have this much money, people want my money, so they're willing to respond to my power or my authority. So we as human beings have not figured this out yet. We have not come to a sense of harmony with how do we deal with the power issues that exist on the planet. I find that really, really intriguing. Because what's behind it? People want to feel good, people want to be free. Why is religion creates such intense mixed response? Because at the head of any religion is an authority. At the head of the Christian religion, it's Jesus and God. And in some people's minds, Jesus is God, so it's really just one and the same. There's one authority. But every religion has this authority aspect of which we are to seek to follow the authority of that, whether it's God or Jesus or some sort of a prophet. And some people are totally fine with it. And other people completely disdain it. So they find all sorts of intellectual reasons to go, it doesn't make any sense, it's ridiculous, it's for weak people, there's no proof of it. But forget all the proof of religion. Let's talk about power. Let's talk about your relationship, my relationship to power, and to what degree you've ever explored it. Because you can't live on this planet without being subject to authority. I mean, unless you want to create your own power authority, where are you going to buy your energy from? How are you going to get electricity to your house? Well, you have to cooperate with the power company. How are you going to get water to your house? Well, you might have a well, but If you don't have a well, then you're going to have a relationship with Charleston Water. And when you want to buy food, you either go to your garden that you've grown it, but if it doesn't happen to be the season for it, you got to go to the store. And you got to cooperate with the system of money. And there's on and on and on. The banking system, the medical system. You break your arm, you're not going to fix it yourself. You have to subject yourself to the various authorities. Now, most of us we take this for granted. We just sort of move within these systems. I believe here you come to this place because you would like to grow spiritually. Now, a lot of people wander the spiritual growth path on their own for this very reason. They do not want to subject themselves to the authority of a spiritual teacher because they're not sure what they're going to have to give up. They're not sure what they're going to have to do in order to have the experience. And that's okay, I understand, because many of us were raised with bad examples of authority. People that claimed to be for our good, but they were not for our good. Or simply people promised something and they didn't follow through. So the whole planet is very touchy when it comes to authority. When you start to examine yourself and your relationship to authority, you will begin to see areas where you're relatively relaxed, easygoing, areas where you're mostly neutral, and areas where you're incredibly touchy. When I say touchy, I mean you're very nervous and you're on edge about what this authority might do to you. That represents an obstacle on the spiritual path because it's a fear. And fear is a diametric opposite to love. And the spiritual path is about love. To grow spiritually means to come into realization of the most loving version of yourself. We humbly admit we don't know how to do that. I humbly admit it to myself. I've been admitting it for a long time. I know more now than I did when I started this spiritual path. And I'm very comfortable saying I know more now than I did, but I'm not comfortable saying I've got it figured out. So there's a kind of a humility to go, I can't really walk the spiritual path at the level that I want to without the help of somebody who I am going to give authority to. Before you give authority to a spiritual teacher, you should investigate. You need to figure out if you can be comfortable trusting that individual. That is totally normal. And in that process, you will probably discover places where you've been wounded and therefore you're very nervous about. So this spiritual teacher that may show up may remind you of, at times, how you were misled, how you were betrayed, how you were used, abused, etc. So it's kind of a difficult minefield for those who really want to grow spiritually. Which is why these kind of communities, and I've been involved with these kind of communities now for 17 years, these mystical orders or these spiritual groups that present a path to true spiritual growth and freedom. Not a church, not a mosque. Those are, I see, more socially fellowship-oriented, about conduct, set of morals and rules that we should follow. But places like this teach you an internal path to true liberation, coming into the realization of what it means to be a soul, as best as the leader of that community can describe it and present it. So something I would like and encourage you to do when you meditate is ask yourself, what authorities within me dictate behaviors that I do? I'll give you an example. You're driving, sirens behind you, lights flashing. Okay, right away you have a choice, believe it or not. It appears as though a police officer is pulling you over. Maybe you don't know why. I think it's normal to feel a little bit tense and to quickly pull over and allow the authority of the police officer to conduct their business. We don't necessarily like that because, oh man, I'm either going to pay money or there's going to be some sort of a conflict. But in most cases, you're back on the road in 20 minutes. But it's very interesting to observe what you go through emotionally in that kind of situation, because there seems to be a sector of the population that believes in that moment they've got a choice whether or not they take off or whether or not they pull over. And why would they choose to take off when we know the consequences of taking off when an officer tries to pull you over is not good at all? So somebody might take off because they're afraid of what that authority is going to do to them, what freedom they're going to take away from them. How you respond in these situations is dictated by what you feel is right, what you believe is appropriate. I believe it's appropriate when an officer pulls me over to pull over, be cooperative, not present any kind of threatening environment, which maybe you hold your hands on the steering wheel and you yes sir and you provide them the documents, and that leads to the quickest revealing of what's going on. When it comes to spiritual growth, what we teach here is that the source of all truth is within yourself. And that's very commonly taught in Jesus' teachings as well. The kingdom of heaven is within. We could stop there and go, oh yes, the kingdom of heaven is within. Feels good, feels right. But we don't stop there. We go, I want to get there. I want to be there. I want to experience it. So then we try to. We sit down in meditation and we try to enter the kingdom of heaven. Or maybe you don't try to, but let's assume you do. And you may find that your mind gets busy or your emotions get busy and you're not sure how to navigate there. So you humbly realize, well, I need some guidance. Then I try to find somebody who can maybe provide some guidance, but who's not going to be all weird, and is not going to ask me a ton of money, and is not going to have sexual, desire for me in an inappropriate way, and all these things that we associate with weird spiritual guru type people. Fast forward, let's say everything works out, and you are introduced through the portal, through your own work, somebody has guided you through the portal into the Christ consciousness. Now that's not to say you can't stumble in there on your own, but I'm somebody who's tried for a long time, and so my take on it is you can stumble in and have some experiences, but if you want to have consistently the experience of entering into that consciousness and be able to reside in it, you're going to need some teaching. You need some guidance. Eventually, you find yourself under the authority or faced with the possibility of being under the authority of the true self within, capital S, the Christ that is in each soul. Believe it or not, this creates tremendous angst for people on the spiritual path, because it's a level of authority that they really can't find fault with because it's within themselves. And yet, it's very scary. The essence of when Jesus says, follow me, in my interpretation, is follow that high self of love of God that is within you. First of all, you have to find it. Second of all, you have to begin to relate to it. Third of all, you decide whether or not you're going to follow it. That is a surrendering of the authority of your mind, of your ego, even of your soul, to this high presence. When you don't do anything to get there, it sounds amazing. In other words, there are teachers who talk about it, who haven't done it, but who talk about it and they're very enthusiastic and there's a sort of gushing sense of excitement to it. I'll tell you that I've been on the path to do it. It's not gushing excitement and enthusiasm. It's very challenging. And it's amazing. And it's angst-ridden, and it takes a long time, and it's frustrating, and it's amazing, and it's all that stuff. Because it's an adjustment to who has been the authority up to this point. So if you want that experience, this is a good place, because this is the path of experience. Our community creates an environment whereby you gain the guidance and the tools to move through these gates to eventually surrender your authority, that's the authority of your mind and your ego, to the authority of the high self that is you also. And then there's a point where it's a complete unification of that. But we have to sort of take the steps. You try to leap ahead to the unification, you'll be fooling yourself. And anybody with spiritual sight will go, something's not right. person is claiming something, but their energy is not in accord with that. So the first step is to examine the authorities that exist within you. And that helps you see what you believe about power and authority. And then you can begin to discern, okay, do I want to keep that in place? In order for you to change your perspective on what it means to follow Christ. For much of the world, following Christ means following Jesus. And I think that's very difficult to do because you only have 40 pages of written scripture where Jesus exists. And of that, there's not that many red letters, meaning him speaking. So how do you apply everything he said to your life? That's why I don't think that model doesn't work for me. But for a lot of people, that's what it means. I'm going to follow Jesus. And I'm saying what it means is follow the love and the truth that is within your being. You have to get to that source, you have to develop a relationship to it, and then you have to decide whether or not you're going to follow it. And why would you follow it? Because you'll get to see what is possible as a human being. That, to me, is the most exciting thing, to fulfill the potential of yourself as a created being. Fulfilling yourself as a created being in a world where people mostly are not doing that, my experience, there are many frustrations. Because one could see, oh, this could be so cool if everybody just agreed and got in harmony with it. No, that's not often the case. So there's an element of sacrifice where you go, okay, I'm growing and I'm trying to evolve spiritually, but I have to keep my heart open in all these instances where it's difficult. People are doing weird stuff. But that's really what I want to leave you with today. I want to leave you with the opportunity to explore your relationship to power, the authorities that exist within your mind, within your ego. And bring those up for study and meditation and see which ones now resonate with you and which ones are to be replaced.